The video game industry has a major problem, and that major problem's greed. We've seen it for some time now with season passes and microtransactions, loot boxes, cosmetic items, any number of things that the gaming industry is using to try and make us, the gamers, the customers, spend more money. And we saw it this last week or so with the news breaking the NBA 2K21 is going to be $70. So there's going to be like a $10 price hike for the next generation. And, a lot of people were saying, games cost so much more money to make now. And yes, they do. But if you actually look at these big companies, they're not losing money, are they? And this is evidenced by what is happening with the top executives. And we increasingly see the top executives seemingly awarding themselves more and more and more money and higher bonuses, while at the other end of the scale, the creatives, the people doing the actual work, are getting laid off and being treated like crap. We've heard about crunch and all the rest of it. But I want to talk about the executives' pay specifically in this one, and maybe I'll make another video talking about game pricing, because I do think that one's an interesting one. But for now, I just want to focus on the executive pay. And we've got an article coming out of PC Gamer talking about an investment group. You can see it here. Investment group that complained about Bobby Kotick says EA execs get paid too much. Now, I would agree with them, but what's behind all this? Well, if we go down, we can see it here. It says, CtW Investment Group, the organisation that said in June that Activision CEO Bobby Kotick is paid too much and called on shareholders to do something about it, has now levelled a similar complaint against Electronic Arts. In a letter to shareholders, the group complained that EA is paying multi-million-dollar bonuses to executives, particularly CFO Blake Jorgensen and CTO Kenneth Moss, while shares are underperforming and employees are being laid off. And it gets more specific than that, because what you actually find is that they've paid special equity bonuses or awards on top of their standard compensation, and it says that here. Now, this is interesting because Jorgensen received a $10 million special equity grant along with his standard $6.5 million annual grant, while Moss got a $7 million grant on top of his $5.5 million annual grant. Now, the trouble there is they then got more special grants that were paid to them before the end of the previous grants. Now, these special equity grants, as it talks about here, it's not actual cash, but it's share options, stuff like that. But this letter is interesting because this is what they say in the letter. Now, let's just go into that here, if I can find that. And here it is. It says, Electronics Arts Inc.'s annual meeting on August 6, 2020. Please vote against the Say on Pay proposal. And then it goes on to say, we urge you to vote against the Say on Pay proposal at Electronic Arts annual meeting on August 6, 2020. The company has gone too far in terms of executive pay, piling on exorbitant equity awards to two executives, and it talks about them, and paying multi-million-dollar bonuses following worker layoffs. While shareholders have benefited from appreciation in the company's stock price over the long term, we believe that these gains do not permit the company to indiscriminately pay its executives. Now, I'm no expert on this, but I would say that I agree with that. But it gets even more interesting because they break down some of the problems. It says, for investors, the following are of immediate concern. EA has an excessive equity granting problem. It has granted some of its executives a new special award before the performance period for a previous special award has even finished, on top of already high annual equity pay. Yeah, these people are people that are getting millions. We're talking sort of tens of millions in some cases. And it goes on. Amid below target vesting vesting of annual performance equity, EA granted 2 overlapping special awards to 2 executives, seemingly to replace unearned equity compensation, which undermines the spirit of pay for performance. So in effect, because they were getting less performance pay, because the company wasn't doing as well as it should have been, their pay was made up, which is crazy if you think about it. If you're on a performance-based pay scheme and you don't perform, you don't get paid. That's the way it should work, at least, and that's the way it would work for most people in sales and those kind of areas. So the idea that these guys are having their pay made up when they're already earning millions would seem, well, it goes against what would be good practice from a business perspective, from my point of view, from a layman's point of view, but also from a moral perspective as well when they're laying people off. But we'll get to the laying off of people in a minute. It says, the awards are further unjustified. The claims of retention are dubious, and they're talking about paying this extra money to keep these people in post so they don't up sticks and go somewhere else. Given that there are already 1 special retention award outstanding and executives at the company generally, including the 2 that received the 2 special awards, are already well compensated through ordinary course equity awards, particularly due to the above median equity grant benchmarking. So they're already earning more than the median in terms of what people get as executive pay and bonuses. It would seem to be is what's being said here. Again, it makes no sense from a business perspective as far as I can see it, but it's morally, well, very, very dubious. And then the final one, executives received above median bonuses following layoffs of roughly 4% of EA's total workforce in 2019. So while the people doing the work are being laid off, EA are paying its executives an award and then another award on top of their already excessive pay. And this goes to what I was talking about the greed in the industry. And, let's be honest here. The people who are making the games, the people who are doing the real work, the creatives, the people who are making the money for the companies, they're not the ones who are getting paid. They're the ones who are getting laid off and then scrabbling around to try and find work. And, we're in a situation with COVID at the moment. And you can bet your bottom dollar there's almost certainly going to be more layoffs at companies like EA and Activision and the like. Meanwhile, the executives continue to get bonus upon bonus. For what exactly? With executives, the way I look at it is if they are going in and they are delivering in terms of finance, because that's their job. It's the finance side is their job. They're not about making good games or whatever, as evidenced by the fact that EA very rarely make good games and they are led by the suits, but that's another argument. The fact is these people's job is to make money. If the company underperforms, their pay should be less, not more. But that's not what's happening here. And as I say, this is just another example of greed in the industry. We've got layoffs, we've got crunch, we've got the people actually doing the work treated like crap. And then these people seem to get rewarded for treating those people like crap. They're not being rewarded for, the company performing above and beyond what was expected, because they're not. The company isn't functioning above and beyond what was expected, not from what we can tell here anyway. I mean, I've been following EA's share price and I know a lot of analysts are saying that they're a good bet and all the rest of it. But from a long-term perspective, what games are EA actually putting out? And I know, you've got your cash cows with FIFA and stuff like that, and you get the odd game coming out like Jedi Fallen Order, which a lot of people thought was a good game. I couldn't get on with it, but a lot of people thought it was a good game. But how many actual games, how many actual new IPs are EA putting out? I've seen the comparison between the sort of Star Wars games that EA have put out versus the Star Wars games that were put out by LucasArts back in the day. And it doesn't compare in terms of either quality or quantity. And I'm not one of these people who wants loads and loads and loads and loads of games coming from them. I just want quality. I don't think EA's produced a very, very high quality game for some years now. And I know some people might argue with me, but, at the end of the day, they're a gaming company and they might be making money, but it would be like, Ford making loads of money, but the cars they're putting out are crap. Sooner or later, it's going to come back and bite you on the arse. Seriously, sooner or later, it's going to come back and bite them because people will get sick of it. I mean, I know I was talking to Grant from Stories for Games the other day, and we were both saying we don't play FIFA anymore. And I know that people are getting to the point where microtransactions and loot boxes and all these other things are becoming normalized. So, youngsters like my lad, he sees microtransactions and they're not something new to him. They're normal. But it shouldn't be normal. And certainly loot boxes, the gambling side of these companies, this shouldn't be normal within gaming. They're making all their money from that. They're not making all their money from making good games. They're making their money by creating addicts and people who keep spending more and more and more money. I saw a story this morning about somebody who'd spent all his parents' savings on FIFA. Just this morning. So there's a moral issue here. But there's also a business issue. And I think sooner or later this will come back to bite them because sooner or later there will be legislation in relation to loot boxes. And then the bottom could fall out for EA and companies like EA, Activision, companies like this. Because if you're not producing quality games, and I would argue that most of their output isn't really quality games, then the way you're making money is going to be gone. If we have legislation that says loot boxes are gambling and they have to be regulated as such, then it's going to be a real problem for EA. And these people are making their money from that. Don't be under any illusions about this. If you look at the actual money that EA and Activision and companies like 2K are making, the money they're making is coming primarily from things like loot boxes. In fact, loot boxes. That's where their money's coming from. That's why these people are getting these big bonuses. Meanwhile, they're laying off the people who make the games and they're narrowing the number of games they're putting out. How is that sustainable in the face of legislation? And I know I'm kind of getting on a rant here and I'm going off topic to some extent, but it all plays into the same thing, and that's greed. These companies are greedy. That's why they've been following the cash. That's why they've been chasing loot boxes rather than chasing making quality products. As I say, I keep saying it's going to come back and bite them on the arse. It might not, because they may lobby and stop loot boxes being made as put out there as gambling, and the legislation may not happen. But if it does, they're in trouble. And even if that never happens, these payments, they're obscene. They're obscene. In the face of layoffs, they are obscene. Two things, as I keep saying. The business side of things, this can't be sustainable. But from a moral perspective, how can you justify paying millions and millions to these people when they're not putting out good products? I don't know. Maybe I'm at odds with it, but they need to be regulated in some way, shape or form. And I agree with this organisation. What are they called again? I forget. Let's have a look. CtW Investment Group. I agree with them. This needs to be sorted out, and I hope the shareholders do vote against it. They didn't with Activision, unfortunately. They narrowly failed to stop this happening at Activision. But let's hope that they block this at EA and send a message. Because from a point of view of shareholders, if I was a shareholder, I would be bloody pissed off at these people getting this amount of money when they're not really doing a good job. I know on the surface of it, it may look like they are because they're bringing in money, but the company's underperforming in many respects. And they're certainly underperforming in terms of the quality product that they're putting out, because they're not. Simply not. But anyway, look, that's my opinion. I've ranted on long enough. I'm going to go and grab myself a cup of tea, and I'll speak to you in the next one. Bye.